Wax on, wax off.
What is the talent triangle, and how can it give you a new perspective and transform your understanding for your own creative journey? And why are you wearing a Los Angeles Dodgers baseball hat? Those are good questions. Let's find out. As far as I know, the talent triangle is a concept I totally made up, at least my version of it. I've sometimes called it the talent pyramid, but I think the talent triangle rolls off the tongue easier and is easier to remember, so I'm sticking with that for now. I played organized sports for 10 years, and at a very young age, you come to understand the basic principles of the talent triangle. Some players can run faster, jump higher, or hit a ball further than other players. A simplified version of the talent triangle is, I'll do it here, this little triangle, and you just got like 3 sections. There's the beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. No shame in being a beginner. In my book, Screenwriting with Brass Knuckles, here are 2 quotes to encourage you if you're just starting a new creative endeavor. Screenwriter and Pulitzer Prize winner Sam Shepard once said, "I wasn't born knowing how to write a play." And keeping with our sports theme today, David Mamet said, "You can't learn bull riding except by getting on the bull." Of course, that translates to every arena in life, but my talent triangle goes a little deeper in hopes of bringing more clarity. I'll explain it from the world of film, video, and TV production. I'll draw a simple triangle, much like our beginning, middle, and advanced, except for this one, I'm going to draw a big circle right in the middle. I'm going to put a little dot, dot, dot line through the middle of that circle, and then right at the top, I'm going to make another line. And that's the talent triangle. Does that make sense to you now? Let me unpack this a little bit. This bottom area here is where all the people are starting out. That's your largest group of people. They just have a zeal for taking photos or shooting videos. So you might buy a camera, you rent a camera, you borrow a camera, you start shooting some photos and some video footage, you take an acting class, whatever it is, this beginning area is level 1, so to speak. You start writing ideas down for a script. This all goes into this area. Nobody's getting paid. You're just learning, and it's a huge gap between people just starting out day 1 and people that are a little bit more advanced. You can actually be quite proficient at this lower level. I once knew an engineer in Satellite Beach who was a very good photographer. He took pictures of local surfers. He had a lot of equipment that he could afford, including an extreme telephoto lens that I think was $10,000 at the time. But he didn't charge for his photos or submit them to magazines. He just posted them online and enjoyed the creative process. So you can be quite advanced in your technical abilities and still be in this area, and you're fine with it. It's just you're just enjoying it at that point. You could be 9 or 90. It doesn't matter. This large area is actually where everybody starts, so that's good to know. But something sparks in you a desire to do that. For me, it happened in 5th grade on a field trip my class took to St. Augustine, Florida. The history was cool, but I ended up shooting 5 rolls of film in one day. I had never shot a roll of film, a single roll of film in my entire life, but something just felt right about it. The next year, I won a yearbook album for a photo I took, and I still didn't know what I was doing. The good news is this is where everyone starts, at the bottom of the triangle. It's important to know that everyone you admire once started out as a beginner. And some people move up this triangle rather quickly. Use that as motivation. You can learn a lot from just studying how other people found success. But know that you're on your own journey. I didn't know in 5th grade that I'd eventually have a 40-year plus career working full-time in production in one way or the other. In fact, I didn't take my first photography class until my sophomore year of high school. And that was a failure at the beginning. The teacher actually told me to drop the class because I was actually shooting film at the time. And after I shot a roll of film, what do you do after you shoot a roll of film? You take it out. I didn't know that you're supposed to rewind it at that time. So I opened it up and I saw the film there and I closed it real quick. And so I didn't develop my film. And the teacher asked where my film was, where my project was, and I explained to her that I opened the back of the camera, and she actually told me to go drop the class, which I refused to do because I said I was there to learn. And I eventually did learn. I think failure is a great way to actually learn. I never opened the back of my camera again. And if she was a really good teacher, she would have said, develop it anyway. Some interesting things would have come out of those frames that were briefly exposed to the light. But anyway, I actually didn't get my own film camera until my senior year of high school. I was 18 at the time. The following year, at 19, I got a job working for a small town newspaper as a sports reporter and photographer. But by that point, it was already an 8-year journey from that original spark in 5th grade. But I was getting paid, though not very much. And what that did is it puts me into this lower circle right here. The lower circle is you're making a little bit of money. This is the circle where you're getting paid to do what you kind of love to do. James Patterson, in his masterclass, is quoting someone else, and he said, "You're fortunate if you find something that you love to do, and it's a miracle if you can find someone to pay you to do it." And so that's what this lower part of the circle is, with a little dot, dot, dot. I call that kind of my equator of talent, maybe, this little dot, 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 where you're actually getting paid. So there I was working for a small town newspaper, making a little bit of money, but I'm actually in this lower circle right here, making some money. Any money, doesn't matter. And if money's not your objective, you can stay in this lower area for as long as you want. Just enjoy the process. It does become a job once you get into this spot here. And it may just be, you may do a wedding for $300 or a portrait of a friend for $50 or whatever it is. But that puts you into this lower sphere of the circle here. And you can be quite accomplished, again, doing community theater and be in the outside circle. Some places you can make a little bit of money doing, I remember hearing Wayne Brady talk about doing industrial videos. That's where he started. So you're making a little bit of money, and then he eventually went to LA. So it worked out well for him. But when you start to make money, you move into this area, and that can feel good because you're getting validation. And as you move from making a few $100s to a few $1,000s, this could be called the danger zone, right in here, where you're starting to say, hey, could I do this full time? Could I quit my job? I'm making enough doing this freelance work in this lower tier here. I'm going to move up into here. Can you sustain it? Can you do it for a living? Can you do it for months, years, even decades? That's the big question as you cross this equator of talent, if you want to call it that. If you have a day job, you're thinking, hey, can I quit my day job and do this full time? Can I get insurance to do this? Can I live the life I want to do? And you can do freelance work and be in this area and actually be making some pretty good money. And sometimes you can make good money for a string of days and then have a string of weeks where you're not making anything. So that's why I call it the danger zone, because you're not quite sure if you can sustain that group, if you can sustain that talent and grow. So this is where this is also right in here. This danger zone is also where you might have what I call a hobby job. Scott Galloway calls it vanity jobs, and I'll do a separate video on that later. But a hobby job or a vanity job is something that you're good at doing and you love doing it, but it doesn't quite pay your bills. And it can be seducing by how cool it sounds. I'm a freelancer, a consultant, an entrepreneur. I work in movies. I sold a painting. I optioned a script. It can be fine if it's a side hustle and you have other means to pay your bills, but you can be delusional too. Gary Vee talks about one entrepreneur who was 35 and hadn't ever started anything, and he yells out, "When did self-awareness leave the room?" So you should have a process here where you're at least, even if it's 1%, you're just getting a little bit better over the years. And it doesn't mean you can't start something when you're in your 30s or 40s, but I think ideally when you look at most people that succeed at a certain level, they did get at least an urge to do something, whether it was paint or write at a young age. Maybe they didn't foster that, but the initial desire and talent was there. Now, when you move above the dotted line and you're making a living, you might be living in a studio apartment in Burbank. I've been there. And actually, it's not easy to achieve this as a creative person where you're not in the danger zone anymore. You're actually making a living, you're paying your bills, and you're in this upper sphere here of the cone. But because of the cost of living, this will vary wherever you are. Right now, I think the studio apartment that I lived in back in the day was only $350 a month. Now, when I last checked, I think it was $2,000. So that's $24,000 a year if you're living by yourself. by taxes, I don't know what that is, $35,000, $40,000 just to eke out a living, probably $80,000, $90,000 just to be able to sustain that and have entertainment, meals, all the other things that people enjoy in life. So it's harder in a big city. Again, you're kind of in the danger zone at that point. But there's people all over the world, photographers, video producers, making a living doing weddings, portraits, working in the corporate world, and education as journalists that I would put in this category. They're above the line. It's their full-time job. They're doing okay. They're not getting rich and famous, but they're doing solid work that they enjoy. So once you move out of the danger zone and you're actually making pretty good money and you can sustain it, maybe you've been doing that for a couple months, it's your full-time job, but you think, hey, maybe I'd like to buy a house someday. Maybe I'd like to start a family, have some savings, all of those things. This is where you're going to be moving up to this next level here. Now, this is not that big of a group, but this is an important group. This is what I would call the sweet spot. This is where you've moved into a level of proficiency where your skills are desired. You're actually making good money. You buy a house, you start a family, you have some savings, you can take some vacations. You can go see that concert or play that costs a couple $100 that you want to do. That's a great spot to be at. Many people who are working regularly in entertainment and production are in this sweet spot, but I also know creatives in New York, Chicago, and LA that feel stuck in the same 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that they've had for years. It can be a hard gig, especially today. What about this little tiny area at the top here? Now that's a tricky area. That's the mountaintop experience. These are the people that have talent and they've developed their talent to the point where they're a 1%er. You often know them by a single name: Hitchcock, Spielberg, Scorsese, Coppola, Tarantino, Kurosawa. In basketball, it's Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, Kareem, Shaq. In classical music, it's Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. For female vocalists, you could say Aretha, Beyonce, Streisand, Rihanna. Some might even be so big you don't even need to use their name. They're just called the King or the Voice, like Elvis Presley and Whitney Houston were known as. But you get the point. This all reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by the late, great Florida State football coach Bobby Bowden, who said of one of his talented players, "He may not be in a class by himself, but whatever class he's in, it doesn't take long to do the roll call." That's the people way up here. These are the people that we aspire to be like when we're down here. We want to be here. And all these people started here, but the tricky part is not all the people that start here end up at the very tip top. Maybe you've seen those motivational posters where they show an iceberg and there's just a little bit above the water line. Again, that's it. There's a whole bunch of work that they took to get into here. That's what we all see here. That's a rare zone. That's the 1%ers. And what's mind-boggling is if I took this little tip top there, I could actually make another pyramid, and I would have, even at the tip top, you would have levels of greatness, and another little tip top up here. So you have your best filmmakers, your best writers, your best artists, and at your tip top, you have what I would call the 1% of the 1%. This is kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. Walt Disney won 26 Oscars. Nobody else has 10 or more. Plus, he had a TV show and a theme park empire. In Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a young actress says that Walt Disney is not only a genius, but a 50 to 100 years kind of genius, meaning a once-in-a-generation talent. Which brings me back to my Los Angeles Dodger hat. I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan, but this isn't my first Dodger hat. I got caught up in Fernando Mania back in the 80s when I was in film school. I even got to go to a playoff game. And I have, here it is, I have a signed baseball from Oral Hershiser for a video I helped edit. You don't even have to be a casual baseball fan to know that Shohei Ohtani, and I don't even know if I'm saying that exactly correctly, but he's the great Dodger from Japan. He's a once-in-a-generation talent. He helped the Dodgers win back-to-back World Series in 2004 and 2005. He was the league MVP a few times and the only player in Major League Baseball history to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a single season. And, oh, by the way, he struck out 10 players as a pitcher and hit 3 home runs in a single playoff game. That's the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. When I was briefly studying acting in my 20s, I was discouraged by my progress, and my acting coach tried to encourage me by saying, just because you're not Babe Ruth doesn't mean you can't enjoy playing baseball. That's great advice. If I was going to update that advice for modern times, I'd say just because you're not Shohei Ohtani doesn't mean you can't enjoy playing the game. And same thing with just because you're not Aaron Sorkin doesn't mean you can't write screenplays. Just because you're not Martin Scorsese doesn't mean you can't make films. And who knows where it's going to lead you. So follow your talent, see where it takes you. Keep on keeping on. Shohei Ohtani.
Ohtani, English
Ohtani.
pronunciation.
Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani.